Hey guys, tonight we begin with one of history's greatest questions, a place so famous that almost everyone knows its name, and almost nobody agrees it ever existed. The lost city of Atlantis, a civilization supposedly richer than kingdoms, more advanced than its neighbours, powerful enough to challenge entire worlds, and somehow so unbelievably good at disappearing that after thousands of years humanity still cannot agree whether we are searching for ruins or chasing a very expensive rumour. So before you get comfortable, take a moment, like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Imagine waking up in a city built in circles, not ordinary circles either. Massive rings of land and water stretching outward like someone had dropped a giant stone into reality itself and watched the world ripple around it. Bridges connect districts. Ships glide through channels cut with impossible precision. Towers rise over glittering harbours. Markets overflow with metals, spices, strange inventions, and people speaking languages from distant lands. Everything feels orderly, deliberate, almost too perfect. You walk through streets that feel planned rather than grown. Because most ancient cities happened gradually. Houses appeared, roads twisted, people adapted. Atlantis, according to the stories, feels different. It feels designed. Designed cities are unsettling because they suggest control. Someone looked at empty land and said, no, reality will arrange itself according to our ideas instead. And immediately something inside you becomes suspicious because history teaches a very simple lesson. Humans love control. Reality usually disagrees. You keep walking, and the city feels almost impossible. Wealth everywhere. Temples plated with precious metals reflecting sunlight so brightly that travellers supposedly saw the city before they reached it. Water systems engineered with precision. Ports packed with ships carrying goods from places people barely understood. Citizens confident enough to believe prosperity would continue forever. And perhaps that is where the story quietly becomes dangerous, because civilizations rarely collapse while expecting collapse. They collapse while feeling permanent. Nobody wakes up and says, "Good morning, everyone. I believe our society is entering its final chapter." People wake up thinking about work, food, politics, annoying neighbours, and whether taxes are becoming unreasonable. Normal thoughts, ordinary thoughts. And history has an unsettling habit of ending extraordinary civilizations in the middle of ordinary days. Somewhere in Atlantis, children are playing, merchants are negotiating, politicians are promising things politicians have always promised with suspicious confidence. Priests perform rituals, sailors prepare ships, everything feels stable, everything feels immortal, and if you listen closely beneath all that confidence, you hear the most dangerous sound in history: comfort. Because comfort creates assumptions. Assumptions create blindness, and blindness creates stories. Future civilizations whisper about while standing over ruins asking impossible questions. Did they know? Did they see it coming? Could they have stopped it? Because according to the legend, Atlantis does not slowly fade. It does not decline gracefully. It disappears. Earthquakes, floods, chaos, one terrible day and one terrible night. Then nothing. An entire civilization swallowed by the sea as if the world itself suddenly decided it had become too much. And maybe that is why people still obsess over Atlantis. Not because of treasure, not because of mystery, but because buried underneath all the myths and oceans is a much quieter fear. The fear that every civilization secretly believes it is permanent right before discovering it isn't. Now imagine days passing inside Atlantis, and the strange thing is not the wealth anymore. Human beings adapt far too quickly for that. Even miracles become routine if you see them every morning. The enormous canals no longer impress the people who cross them daily. The towering walls feel ordinary. The markets full of gold and rare materials become background scenery. Children born in Atlantis do not look around in awe because they have never known anything else. To them this is normal, and that may be the most dangerous word in history. Normal. Because civilizations often fail not when they become weak, but when extraordinary success starts feeling permanent. You wake up and the city still shines, ships still arrive, food still fills the markets, politicians still make promises with the same calm confidence politicians somehow possess in every century. Priests still speak about divine favour, Everyone believes the city is blessed because how else could something so magnificent exist? Success begins creating its own evidence. People stop asking whether they deserve prosperity and start assuming prosperity proves they deserve everything. And slowly, almost invisibly, confidence begins changing into certainty. Certainty is dangerous because certainty hates questions. Questions become uncomfortable. Questions become annoying. Questions become the sort of thing pessimists ask. Somewhere in Atlantis, a merchant notices trade routes becoming more difficult. Weather patterns feel different. Certain shipments arrive late. Small things, harmless things, nothing worth panicking over. Another person notices politicians arguing more aggressively than before. A temple official quietly complains that traditions are changing. Someone else notices resources being used faster than expected. But cities this large are noisy places. Warnings disappear beneath activity. One worried voice becomes background sound inside thousands of confident voices. Besides, why worry? Atlantis has survived everything so far. Success creates memory problems. People remember victories and quietly forget disasters avoided by luck. They start believing survival happened because they were exceptional rather than fortunate. And then comes another problem humans repeatedly invent for themselves: competition inside prosperity. Because when survival stops being difficult, people begin competing over status instead. Wealth expands, luxury expands, expectations expand. Suddenly it is not enough to be successful. You must appear successful. Bigger homes, better clothing, greater displays of power. Influence becomes a game everyone wants to play, and eventually somebody decides the game should have winners and losers. Families compete, districts compete, political factions compete. The city still looks magnificent from outside, but inside something subtle begins shifting. Cooperation slowly becomes ambition wearing expensive clothing. Now imagine standing inside a crowded public square watching speakers address enormous audiences. They promise growth, more expansion, more trade, greater influence, greater power beyond the sea. And people cheer because confidence sounds beautiful when life is comfortable. Nobody applauds caution. Nobody celebrates someone stepping onto a stage and saying perhaps we should slow down and reconsider everything. That person receives concerned looks and fewer invitations to social gatherings. Because success creates emotional gravity. It pulls everyone toward larger dreams, whether those dreams make sense or not. The city becomes addicted to itself. Atlantis starts believing its own mythology while still alive. And perhaps that is the moment history quietly becomes uncomfortable, because suddenly Atlantis no longer feels ancient. It feels familiar, very familiar. You look around and realize every civilization tells itself similar stories. We are different. We are stronger. We are smarter. We understand things previous generations did not understand. We solved the problems others couldn't solve. History happened to everyone else, not us, never us. Atlantis, according to legend, became powerful enough to challenge neighbouring lands. Armies expanded, influence spread, ships reached farther distances. Success demanded continuation, because success without expansion starts feeling like failure to ambitious people. And that is strange, because having everything somehow convinced them they needed more. Human beings have a remarkable ability to stand inside abundance while staring hungrily toward horizons. Maybe because satisfaction has always had a short memory. Somewhere a ruler discusses strategy with advisors, maps spread across tables, borders marked carefully, resources counted, numbers calculated. The language sounds rational, controlled, intelligent. Nobody calls it greed because greed never introduces itself honestly. It arrives wearing words like progress, opportunity, destiny. Everyone around the table nods because ambitious ideas feel exciting before consequences arrive. Outside, ordinary citizens continue living ordinary lives. Families eat together, children play near waterways, workers unload cargo from arriving ships. People complain about prices because humans apparently do that in every century regardless of circumstances. Nobody senses disaster because disaster almost never announces itself dramatically beforehand. Real disaster approaches quietly. It hides beneath routines. It waits inside assumptions. It grows while people remain busy making plans for next week. And somewhere beneath Atlantis itself, something ancient shifts silently beneath stone and water. Nobody hears it, nobody notices, because beneath every city exists a truth humans dislike remembering. The ground underneath us is not stable, it only pretends to be. The strange thing about disasters is that they almost never begin with a giant explosion in the sky or some dramatic warning delivered by a mysterious figure standing on a mountain. History would honestly be much easier if reality worked that way. Instead, catastrophe usually begins with tiny details behaving strangely. Small things, forgettable things, the sort of things people notice briefly before continuing with their day because everyone has work tomorrow, and responsibilities do not pause simply because reality feels slightly unusual. Imagine waking up in Atlantis one morning and feeling something subtle beneath your feet. Not enough to frighten you, just enough to notice. Maybe a cup trembles slightly on a table. Maybe birds suddenly change direction together. Maybe harbour water moves strangely for a few moments, and then settles again as if embarrassed someone noticed. You pause, you look around. Other people seem unconcerned, so naturally you convince yourself everything is fine because human beings have always looked at calm crowds and assumed calm crowds cannot possibly be wrong. Markets still open, ships still leave harbour, children still run through streets laughing at things adults stopped finding funny years ago. Life continues because life is stubborn like that. But over the following days, something begins changing in ways difficult to explain. Animals behave strangely, horses become restless, dogs bark at empty spaces, birds vanish from places where they normally gather. Fishermen return with uncomfortable expressions and vague explanations about currents feeling wrong. The sea itself begins acting differently. Water rises where it should not rise, retreats where it should not retreat. Ancient sailors understood something modern people sometimes forget. Water has moods, and when water begins acting strangely, wise people pay attention. Somewhere inside Atlantis, a few citizens begin whispering. Quiet conversations happen between neighbours. Someone mentions unusual vibrations beneath the city. Another mentions unusual weather. Another remembers stories told by grandparents about strange signs appearing before terrible events. But confidence is still stronger than concern because confidence has been growing for years. Powerful societies develop a strange relationship with warnings. They begin treating warnings like personal insults. The larger and stronger a civilization becomes, the harder it becomes to imagine vulnerability. Vulnerability feels incompatible with greatness. Great cities are supposed to dominate uncertainty, not experience it. And Atlantis still feels untouchable. The walls still stand. The temples still shine. The government still speaks confidently. Authority still projects certainty, because authority dislikes admitting confusion. Imagine officials standing before crowds assuring everyone that unusual events happen occasionally. No reason for panic, no reason for concern. Everything remains under control. People hear those words and feel temporary relief because certainty feels comforting, even when certainty is borrowed. Besides, fear is exhausting. People prefer normality. They want ordinary routines back. They want simple, predictable days. They want tomorrow to resemble yesterday because routine creates emotional safety. And perhaps that is why civilizations become fragile. Not because people are foolish, but because people are human. Human beings desperately want stability, even when instability has already entered the room and quietly taken a seat. Then one night you wake suddenly without understanding why. The city feels wrong. Not loud wrong, not obvious wrong. Silent wrong. The kind of silence that feels heavy. You sit there listening. No voices outside, no movement. No familiar sounds drifting through streets. Then beneath you, something moves. Very slightly at first. A faint vibration. You tell yourself it will stop. But it doesn't. It grows stronger. Walls tremble. Objects shake. Somewhere in the distance, something crashes violently against stone. Suddenly another impact follows, and then another. People wait confused. Voices appear outside. Doors open. Fear spreads faster than understanding. The ground moves again, harder this time. Buildings shudder. Stone cracks. Streets ripple beneath running feet. Somewhere towers collapse into clouds of dust. Somewhere bridges split apart. Somewhere people scream names into darkness, searching desperately for family members. And suddenly Atlantis realizes something horrifying. The city everyone believed permanent has begun moving beneath itself. Because civilization teaches people to trust structures. Walls protect us, roads guide us, buildings shelter us, cities make nature feel distant. But underneath every civilization waits an uncomfortable truth. The Earth never signed an agreement promising to remain still. The shaking continues. Panic replaces order, crowds flood streets, priests rush toward temples, officials shout instructions nobody can hear clearly. Parents grab children. Friends lose each other inside confusion. Somewhere harbour water begins pulling backward unnaturally fast, exposing rocks, and seafloor never meant to be seen. Ships tilt awkwardly against mud and stone. Fish twist violently in shallow water. People stop running for a moment because confusion interrupts fear. They stare toward the sea trying to understand what they are seeing, and then understanding arrives all at once, because the ocean is gone, not permanently, just temporarily. And ancient people understood exactly what that meant. Water does not disappear without intending to return. Now imagine standing there in Atlantis with thousands of other people, staring toward the horizon where the sea should be, because for a few impossible moments reality itself seems confused. The harbour that once carried endless ships now looks exposed and wrong, like the world accidentally revealed something hidden beneath its skin. Boats lie tilted against wet stone. Fish thrash across surfaces that sunlight has not touched in ages. Children stare in silence. Adults stare harder, because adults understand something children do not. Oceans do not simply leave. Somewhere in the crowd, someone begins shouting. Then several people begin shouting. Panic spreads with terrifying speed because fear behaves differently from reason. Reason walks. Fear runs. People begin moving through streets all at once. Some rush toward higher ground. Others rush home, searching for family. Others stand frozen because the mind occasionally refuses to accept information too large to process. Priests call out prayers. Officials attempt organization. Orders are shouted through chaos and disappear beneath the noise of thousands of frightened voices. Somewhere mothers pull children close. Somewhere merchants abandon goods scattered across streets because suddenly gold looks very unimportant. Somewhere a man spends precious seconds trying to gather possessions before realizing he cannot carry a lifetime. Civilization teaches us ownership. Disaster teaches us weight. Then somebody sees it first. Not the wave itself. The line. A dark line stretching across the horizon where sea meets sky. At first it appears distant, almost harmless. Then people notice something impossible. It is growing larger, not gradually, quickly, horribly quickly, and the mind struggles because distance becomes meaningless when something is too large to understand immediately. The line rises, higher, wider. Suddenly people realize they are not looking at waves, they are looking at a wall, water itself standing upright against the horizon, moving toward them with impossible speed. And for one suspended moment, time feels strange because human beings do something fascinating in extreme situations. We hesitate. We pause between disbelief and acceptance. Somewhere citizens stare, unable to move because what they are seeing refuses to fit inside ordinary experience. Oceans are not supposed to rise into mountains. Water is not supposed to chase cities. Reality has rules, and this suddenly feels like reality forgetting them. Then instinct finally wins. People run, thousands run, streets become rivers of movement, sandals strike stone, bodies collide, voices disappear into a storm of screaming and confusion. The city that once felt perfectly organized now becomes a maze. Bridges clog with terrified crowds, stairways jam, narrow streets trap people inside waves of panic moving nowhere fast. The structures designed for beauty and order suddenly reveal something terrible. Cities work wonderfully until everyone tries escaping at once, and above all of it, the wave keeps coming. Larger now, larger than walls, larger than towers, larger than anything most people inside Atlantis have ever seen. You can hear it before it arrives. A sound beyond ordinary sound. Not thunder, not wind. Something deeper, something ancient. The sound of overwhelming force moving with absolute indifference. Nature rarely hates people. Hatred suggests emotion. Nature simply continues. The first impact feels like the world breaking apart. Harbour walls vanish instantly. Ships lift into air like toys. Stone explodes beneath pressure. Water crashes through streets with impossible violence, carrying wood, metal, animals, people, entire pieces of buildings. Everything becomes movement. Everything becomes noise. The city disappears beneath chaos. Temples collapse. Towers fall. Bridges twist and vanish beneath black water filled with debris and shattered dreams. Somewhere people cling desperately to floating wreckage. Somewhere others disappear entirely. Somewhere voices call names swallowed immediately by roaring water. Atlantis, the city that believed itself permanent, begins coming apart piece by piece beneath forces nobody can negotiate with, influence, or persuade. Because oceans do not care about wealth, oceans do not care about power, oceans do not care about beautiful architecture or political influence or grand ambitions,